Everyone thinks success comes from adding more skills, more money, more effort, more pressure. But no one talks about the day Ethan Cole emptied his mind, and his entire life changed forever. This is not a story about talent. This is a story about letting go. Stay till the end, because what changed Ethan might be the one thing you are missing right now. Ethan Cole was 32, living in Chicago. On the outside, his life looked fine. He had a job, he paid his bills, he smiled. But inside his mind, there was constant noise. You're not doing enough. You're falling behind. What if you fail? His mind never stopped talking. Even at night, his thoughts raced like cars on a highway with no brakes. One evening, after another exhausting day, he sat alone, scrolling through social media. Promotions, travel, celebrations. Felt heavy, not because he lacked ability, but because his mind was full of pressure and fear. He whispered, "I'm so tired, but I haven't even moved." His heart raced. His hands shook. He excused himself from the meeting and went to the restroom, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back looked utterly exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped, his face a mask of tension. Ethan pressed his palms against the cool ceramic sink and whispered to his reflection, "Why can't my mind just stop?" That evening, instead of going home, Ethan walked aimlessly through the city. The noise of the traffic faded into a dull hum as he found himself in a quiet public park. It was almost empty, save for an old man sitting on a bench, calmly feeding pigeons. Ethan sat on the far end of the same bench, letting out a deep, heavy sigh. After a few minutes of shared silence, the old man spoke, his voice gentle. "You look like someone carrying a very heavy bag." Ethan managed a weak smile. "Feels like it." The old man tilted his head. "What's inside the bag?" he asked. Ethan hesitated, but then the words just poured out of him. He spoke of the constant stress, the crippling fear, the suffocating self-doubt, the weight of regret, the crushing expectations from himself and others, the bitter taste of past failures. The old man listened patiently, nodding slowly. When Ethan finished, the old man said something that sounded strange at first. "Your problem isn't that you don't know enough. Your problem is that your mind is too full." Ethan frowned, confused. "Too full of what?" The old man smiled. "Noise." The next evening, drawn by an unspoken pull, Ethan returned to the park. The old man was there again. Imagine you want to pour fresh, clean water into a cup, but the cup is already full of old, stagnant water, dirt, and dust. What happens when you try to pour the new water in? Ethan thought for a moment. It just overflows. The new water can't get in. Most people try to pour success, happiness, and peace into a mind that is already overflowing. But how? The concept felt so foreign, so impossible. The next morning, however, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He didn't immediately reach for his phone. Instead, he just sat on the edge of his bed and closed his eyes. Instantly, his thoughts launched their usual attack. Deadlines, bills, a relentless storm of what-ifs. But this time, instead of fighting them, instead of getting swept away, he tried something different. He just watched them. He let them pass, picturing them like clouds moving across the vast sky of his mind. Those first 10 minutes felt like an eternity. But then, something incredible happened. For the first time in as long as he could remember, there was silence. Not a total, absolute silence, but a space, a quiet clearing in the noisy forest of his mind. That day, Ethan started small. He focused on one task at a time, resisting the urge to multitask. When he caught himself comparing his life to others on social media, he gently put his phone down. He started taking short, quiet walks without listening to music or podcasts, just noticing the world around him. It wasn't a magical, overnight fix. The noise didn't vanish completely. But day by day, the space inside his mind grew. The silence became more frequent, more accessible. He realized the old man was right. The goal wasn't to add more positive thoughts. It was to create the space for them to arise naturally. If you feel like your mind is constantly overflowing, maybe it's not about adding more. Maybe it's about letting go. Have you ever felt trapped by your own thoughts? Like your mind is a battlefield, and you're losing the fight? This was Ethan's life. Every day, he was haunted by the past mistakes, regrets, and what-ifs, replayed in a never-ending loop. The noise in his head was deafening, leaving him exhausted, anxious, and stuck. He tried everything, working harder, sleeping more, even forcing himself to be positive. But nothing worked. The chaos just grew louder. One afternoon, sitting alone in a park, defeated, he saw an old man quietly observing the world around him. Ethan watched him for a while, and a simple but powerful idea struck him. What if the solution wasn't to add more, but to take away? What if the goal wasn't to win the war in his mind, but to simply stop fighting? From that day on, Ethan tried a new approach. He stopped comparing. He stopped replaying the past. Whenever his mind started screaming with anxious thoughts, he would pause and ask himself one simple, powerful question. Is this thought helping me, or is it hurting me? If it was hurting him, he made a conscious choice to let it go. It wasn't an overnight fix. It wasn't perfect, but slowly, gently, he practiced letting go. Days turned into weeks, and something inside him began to shift in a profound way. As the chaos in his mind quieted down, clarity began to emerge. Ethan started to see his life with fresh eyes. He finally admitted to himself that he hated his job, not because he was bad at it, but because it drained his soul. He saw how he had pushed his dreams to the side, not because he lacked courage, but because fear had occupied every inch of his mental space. One quiet evening, sitting at his desk, he took out a piece of paper and wrote down a single sentence. What would I do if my mind was calm instead of scared? The answer that flowed onto the page surprised him. He wanted to start a small design business. It was a dream he'd held for years, always buried under a pile of what-ifs and self-doubt. But this time was different. Instead of overthinking every possible outcome, he took one small, manageable step. Then another. There was no pressure, no overwhelming noise, just pure, simple focus. His mind transformed. It became like an empty, spacious room ready for him to build something new and meaningful inside it. 6 months later, Ethan's life didn't look perfect from the outside, but on the inside, it felt peaceful. His new business was growing, slowly but surely. He was sleeping better. That old spark of confidence, long since extinguished, was beginning to return. One evening, he found himself back at that same park. The old man wasn't there. Ethan sat down on the bench, a soft smile on his face. He finally understood the old man's lesson. True progress didn't come from adding more effort or pushing harder. It came when he courageously removed the mental clutter that was holding him back. Fear had lied to him. Comparison had distracted him. The constant noise had utterly exhausted him. He learned that an empty mind didn't mean an empty life. On the contrary, it meant creating space for clarity, for courage, and for purpose, to finally take root. So if your life feels heavy right now, if you feel stuck, I want you to ask yourself this. What is filling your mind? Is it fear, regret, comparison? The endless cycle of overthinking? You don't have to fight these thoughts. You don't need to control every little thing. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply let go. Because when you empty your mind of the noise, you finally give your life the room it needs to grow. Thank you for watching.